Part 2. Our situation worried them. We are a little paradox, extremely good at cooperation and also extremely good at organized violence. Our aggression stood out. Cooperation plus violence isn't unique, but we're very, very good at both. And once you get to things like nuclear power, that combo tends to end very badly. They'd seen plenty of variations of that play out over the last few billion years. About 10,000 years ago, our trajectory towards that became clear, and there was a major argument inside the council about what, if anything, to do with us. Our side said the odds favored self destruction once we discovered and weaponized atomic level technologies. The other side argued we were worth saving, or at least worth understanding better. The compromise was an experiment, one which has ramifications as to why all of this has been hidden for so long. Roughly 65,000 humans were removed from Earth and relocated to what is basically a preserve on a planet around a star you know as 82 Eridani. Internally, we called those people Irids. That star is in our catalogs if you feel like looking it up, but the details of the target planet are not public for obvious reasons. The Irids were started in a kind of controlled paradise. Their world has large dispenser systems that can produce whatever basic material needs they have. Food, clothing, tools, building materials, entire structures for habitation. Think Star Trek replicators scaled up and wired into the environment. In that setup, nobody starves, nobody's homeless in the way that we understand it. Nobody spends their life chasing money just to meet needs. This was just the Arid's natural reality. The point from the council's view was to remove material scarcity from the equation and see what humans do and achieve when they are not spending most of their energy bashing each other over the head over resources. Meanwhile, the rest of us stayed here on the control planet dealing with scarcity, ownership, money, hoarding, and the rise of socio-political systems based on scarcity. All of the things that define Earth civilization. The result, according to what we were briefed, is that the Arids are now around 5,000 years ahead of us technologically, averaged out. Same species, same basic biology, same starting point, completely different trajectory because of conditions. Nature versus nurture on a cosmic scale. For most of their history, the Arids thought they were native to that world. They only found out the truth roughly a century ago in our time. They learned that they were uplifted, that their ancestors were taken from Earth and they have cousins here. Once they knew that, some of them started coming back to visit the original branch. This is where their history intersects some of the UFO stories you know. The aliens that look almost exactly human are just that, human. They're not hybrids, not clones, not secretly angels or demons. They are Arids, born around another star, showing up here after being given a 10,000-year head start. They have in some cases met with leaders of certain countries and at least 2 UN Secretary Generals, both now deceased. Now we get to why this has been buried for 80-some years. You have to think like a senior U.S. official in the 1940s and 50s. World War II has just ended, the Cold War is starting, everything is viewed through capitalism versus communism. Then someone puts a briefing in front of you that says, in essence, there's a group of humans living on another world who have no money, no private ownership in the way we structure it, automatic systems that meet their basic needs, and in that environment they advanced thousands of years faster than we have. The men who built what we now call the legacy program in the US that sounded less like interesting anthropological data and more like a walking, talking advertisement for space communism, it looks like proof that communism works better than the system that they were trying to defend. That and the ramifications of what could happen if that ever got out terrified them more than the existence of aliens did. Though, to be fair, They plenty had their worldview rocked by the latter also. So the core of the cover-up has never just been aliens or even their technologies. It has been the systemic implications, the idea that scarcity and ownership are not hard-coded into reality, that they are one possible way to run a society and maybe not the optimal one. That was seen as an existential political threat in the 1940s and 50s, and some of the people who grew up in that mindset are still steering parts of the program today. Now add in the famous crash retrieval incidents, Roswell 47, Kecksburg 65, a handful of other retrievals around the US and around the world. What we were told is that most of these were not accidents, they were tests and gifts. The council, with arid input, allowed certain crafts and system to fall into human hands in a controlled way. Enough intact technology that a very motivated and capable society could learn from it, not enough that it would instantly rewrite everything. In fact, the Kecksburg landing, it wasn't called a crash internally, was a direct result of a meeting and gift agreement made at Holman Air Force Base the year earlier. The idea was to see who did what with it, who could figure it out, who kept it secret, who tried to share, who tried to weaponize it, who panicked. Based on those results, the plan was to pick one primary human partner to act as the main interface for full council contact and begin a managed process of reunifying Earth humans with the Arids and introducing us to the wider community. You can argue whether that is a good way to do it. I'm just telling you, that's the framework I saw laid out. In the 1980s and 90s, during a brief period when the Cold War ended, there was a push to finally disclose much of this. This was initially proposed at a meeting between the US President Ronald Reagan and the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev at a summit in Reykjavik, Iceland in 1986. Also discussed was getting rid of nuclear weapons, as had been urged by the Council. In the end, it was decided to wait. There were two more U.S. pushes for disclosure between them, then in 2017 New York Times article. One during the Clinton administration and another during the transition between the Obama and first Trump presidency. Now for the part that put a clock on all of this stuff you've been hearing about, 2027, etc. About 3 years ago, a species that is hostile to the Council found out about the Earth Project. They are not part of the collective. They resent the way the Council handles in younger civilizations, as they themselves felt victimized by the Council. They also resent the credit the Council gets for successful cases. I've heard them described as the jealous neighbors who would rather break your toys than watch you win. Yes, we sometimes joke about this stuff because, again, it's the only way to stay sane with this everyday knowledge and integrate it into your civilian life of Thanksgiving dinner, Christmas shopping, taking the kids to soccer practice, etc. Just as an aside, even consider how two of the biggest holidays of the year involve gluttony, Thanksgiving and overconsumption, Black Friday. When you have the knowledge many have within the program, stuff like that is taken for granted. It seems really weird and a symptom of the now, forced scarcity of our current system. Anyway, back to the aliens. The hostile group I mentioned decided to spoil the experiment. The species is ahead of us technologically, but far behind the Council. Though they also inhabit a relatively nearby star, cosmologically speaking, their travel is slower, less elegant, and has to take place in stages. Think of it as space island hopping, which is why the lead time is so long. You probably want to know what they look like. Physically, based on the descriptions we saw, they are about 5 feet tall, segmented bodies, multiple limbs, basically ant-like in overall form. Nothing subtle or humanoid about them. They launched an expedition towards Earth with the stated goal of making a mess. Stay tuned for part 3.